Hi everyone, my name is Karen. I want to thank you all for joining me today and to welcome everyone that has subscribed to my channel. I really appreciate you stopping by and spending some time with me. I did want to mention that for those of you who had previously belonged to my channel, there were quite a few Hardanger videos there, and I have taken those down actually some time ago, and I just wanted to let you folks know that the reason they were taken down is because they were really done in conjunction with the class I was teaching. And I'm no longer teaching that class because unfortunately that needle workshop closed. So I did take those videos down. So for anyone that was really looking forward to those or using those to help them out, I do apologize for that. But today we're going to work on some diagonal stitching, and I'm also going to continue working on my Stitcher's Retreat by Heaven and Earth Designs. I had done a previous video that was sort of a tutorial for the way that I stitch. So if you want a more detailed explanation, please go back and watch that video, and that will help to explain what you're seeing today. Again, I'm not an expert by no means. This is just my way of stitching, and there really was a lot of trial and error until I came upon this way that really worked for me. When I flip over to end a thread to the back of this piece, you'll see what I mean, because it all looks great on the front. At least I think it looks great. However, on the back, you can see my many experiments of what I did. So with that, let's get into some stitching. I hope to only have this video to be about 30 minutes long because I think that's what most people prefer. So that's what we'll get into. So I'm just gonna stitch away, and if people have questions, actually I need my glasses here first. If people have questions, please let them for me in the comments below, because that is how I will find some of the things to talk about during a video. Again, if you haven't seen it, this is my little trick for threading a needle. Loop pops right through. And again, like I said in my other video, in this way, you do a lot of threading and unthreading of needles. However, due to the fact that my stitching is neater this way, I really don't mind having to thread and unthread my needles so often. It's just it is what it is, and we find a way that works, and that's just what we do. Uh-oh. I keep losing my focus here, and that's probably because I'm putting my hand in front. Here we go. It pops right up. I apologize for that if it goes out of focus for you. I'm, again, really new at this, so I really am having to experiment quite a bit with what I'm doing. I didn't mention it in the first video, and now sitting here and realizing that I didn't do that. And hopefully your thread doesn't knot upon itself. One of the other reasons I like to stitch this way is because if you notice, I'm always coming up in a hole that only has no thread in it or one thread in it. I don't come up in holes that already have been used twice. I gotta mark these off as I go, or I'm gonna get myself confused. And there is a reason for that. When you come up in a hole that has already been used twice, you have that, it will have that tendency to pull your stitches loose. Like your top leg of your stitch may pull back up with the thread that you're bringing up through the hole. And, oops, went the wrong way there. Personally, I don't like that. I like my stitches as much as possible to look even and uniform, and just makes a nicer looking piece in the end. So that's what I strive for. Does it always work? No. Are there occasions where I will come up in a thread that has been used more than 2 times? Yes, on occasion I will. Especially, and you can probably see it right here. I left that one stitch and I didn't do it on that other diagonal because it was only one stitch of one color on that diagonal, and I could see from my chart that I was going to be using it again when I got onto the diagonal that I'm currently working on. So I did not stitch that one, and I kind of saved it for this. So in that instance, I will, oh, maybe not. I'll still come up in a thread that's only used twice, go down and come up in an empty hole. So you just do pay attention to that. Again, I mean, that's why I don't really like the cross-country stitching, because I found I was pulling my stitches loose, and then that's one of the things that makes your piece look lumpy and bumpy, and I really just didn't like that. So, and I picked this part of my chart to stitch while we did this video because I have to add threads. I'll probably be getting rid of threads, and I'm using a bunch of different colors, so you can see, it gives you a better idea of how this process works. And as you can see, yes, it does take a little bit longer. Okay, now we have to add a color. So, my little handy dandy Payco organizer here. Speaking of Payco organizers, I will tell you something. I did previously have quite a few strands of each color on my organizer, and I changed that. I took it off so that there was only maybe 1 or 2 strands on, because if you notice, let's see if I can get it for you in the frame here. When they hang down and you have a lot of thread on each hook, these strands that are hanging tend to get really tangled together. So they are fabulous for quickly getting floss, but I've kind of learned a lesson of don't put too many strands on, or you're really going to have a tangled mess. And then I had a few choice words for that until I got it straightened out. So I removed a lot of the thread and just left a strand or 2 on. To start a thread, since I'm stitching with just 1 thread, and I can't use a loop method for that, I prefer not to turn my fabric over as much as possible. I prefer to work everything from the front if I can. So what I do is go down a couple stitches away and pull my thread through, come up where my stitch is going to be, pull it just so that there's a little itty bitty tail showing, do my first leg of the stitch, and when I'm coming up, I'm kind of dragging my needle up to make sure I catch that thread and it doesn't pull through. When I go back down, I use my needle and I kind of just go over the back, and if you just kind of brush along the back, that little end goes right through. Now, do you get a lot of those little tails on the other side? And you'll see that when I end a thread. Yes, you do. However, I'll go back at some point in time and give all those little strands a haircut so that it's not a big mess back there. When I end the thread, I'll show you how to do that. And I really do that by just going back and running my thread under a couple stitches. As you can see in here, I have used a pin stitch, and I like the pin stitch. However, on 25 count, when you're trying to pierce the middle of that single thread in the weave of the fabric and pierce the one on the top as well as the one behind, it does get a little bit difficult to do, to say the least. My favorite needle is a bohin needle, and on this 25 count I'm using a size 26, and with those I really was having a hard time to pierce those threads. So I had gotten some of is it Pat Carson's needles, and that's this one, the one with the gold eye, to see if those were a bit sharper. And they are a little bit sharper, but it's still a little difficult to pierce those threads. It's a bit of a challenge. Well, we got to add another new color here. Now, the other thing, if you want to thread your needle yet one more time, is you could switch it to a regular, maybe a regular sewing needle, which is sharper, if you wanted to do that. Personally, I'm already threading my needle enough that I don't feel the need to have to thread again. And seriously, it's just as easy to just flip it over and work it under some stitches on the back. Okay, here we go. Now this one, I do it the same way, except I'm not going between. I just, I'm going a couple, what would be X's away, going down, doing the first leg of my stitch, coming up, down again, and pulling the back through. Now I have to park this one, oops, okay. I have to park this one a little bit further away, so that's when you use your chart and see where you need it next, and it's going to be right down here. So that is what you're doing. You're always, for those of you that aren't real familiar with parking, you're always putting your thread where it's going to be used the next time that you need it. So when you're working across these stitches, you get to that symbol and there's a thread there, then that should be the correct color because you've parked it correctly. And sometimes that happens where you pull those little tails through. And then, there we go. I should have, there we go. If that happens to you and you can't like scratch along the back and get it down, there is a tool, and I think I got mine at Joann's. They have them. They also have them at 123 Stitch. It's called a snag nabbit, which is a handy dandy little, it's almost like a needle, but this end of it is a little rough so that you put it down through the hole, and then when you pull it through, it pulls that little thread through with it. Okay, I have to add another new thread, but what I'm going to do is complete these stitches that I already have threads here hanging for. Okay, and like I said, folks, if you have questions or something you want to know and I know the answer, I will certainly try and help you out with that. If I don't know the answer, I will certainly try and find one for you. If I remember the question correctly, there was a woman, and honestly, I don't remember her name, that asked about using pearl cotton in place of, I believe it was black, and using a size 12 pearl cotton. I believe you could do that. My only concern would be if you're going to mix pearl cotton on this with, say, a single strand of DMC floss, is it going to give you a different texture? And do you want that different texture in your piece? Now, if it's all background, you might be okay. And I don't want to say, yes, it will work, or no, it's not going to work. What I really, really would suggest is to do a bit of test stitching. Do some stitching where maybe you're stitching, I don't know, a 10 by 10 block of the color with the pearl cotton, and then next to it, stitch a block with some confetti in it, different colors, and see what is the contrast between the two. Does it give you a different texture? Does it... Oops, I kind of lost you here. I'm loose. You're probably not going to see here. Oop, that was some needles. Yeah, here's my back. And as you see, there are lots of little threads here that need trimmed. And of course, what you're seeing here is in a very high confetti area. This area only had maybe 3-4 colors. And you can see the diagonals. Let me zoom out just a little bit here, because you can probably see where I switched the diagonals. Here I went on this diagonal, here I'm going on this diagonal. Up here, I was going up and down. So it just gives you an idea. What you do on the back doesn't necessarily show the same on the front. You're not going to know it on the front. So what I'm going to, kind of unbalanced here. What I'm going to do to end a thread is just, I'm working on my lap stand, my case creation lap stand. So when I flip it on this table, it's just a little top heavy. And just pull it under a few stitches. And where'd my scissors go? There they are. Just pull it under a few stitches and clip it. And you shall be fine. Okay. Let's go back here. Let's get you back in the right frame. and zoom you back. Where are you? There we go. Sorry for the shaking. I just got this little like goosenecky thing to hold my iPhone on to record these. So again, this is a little bit of a getting used to it. Okay. And as you see, it takes a little bit longer, especially when you have a lot of colors in a line, but again, to me, it really is worth the time now. And I will, for those of you that don't know what this design looks like, I will attempt, I'm not going to promise anything, but I will attempt at some point to put in a picture so that you can see what it looks like. Oh, gotta end another one, so hopefully we'll not get too out of balance here. Let's go this way and see if we can not get so wobbly. And again, just run it under some stitches in the back. And then I think we're a little out of frame. I apologize for that. And just cut it off and come back around. Okay, and we are learning a lesson here. Next time we have to put something on this stand to keep it from A, sliding around, and B, being top heavy, because we certainly don't, okay, stop the shaking. There we go. We certainly don't want it to be top heavy and falling over while we're trying to stitch. I'm going to start another new one. And like I said, I think I showed you in the other video, you just, where are we here? Oh, there we go. You just get a hold of your thread when you use these and just pull it right out. Okay, and then they're one. I just like them so much because they're all your colors are right here. When you use it up, you just refill it with another strand. Here we go. You don't have to fish through a box or flip through bobbins. My threads are already pre-cut, so when I pull it off, it's the length that I like. It's the length that I don't have to fuss with cutting anything. There we go. And then this one's going to go 3. Three down, and sometimes you just have to move your other threads out of the way to find your place to park. Where it gets a little challenging is when there was a spot that I had up in here, even more colors, and it was like, holy Hannah. I can't find my spot. So you just move your existing threads out of the way so that you can count to the right spot, because you really want to be sure that you're placing your thread correctly, because you're really trusting that it's in the right spot. And I think I mentioned this before. The other thing, if you have trouble threading your needle, okay, flip it over and put the eye the other way, because it is in the manufacturing of the needle. One side is a smidge different than the other side, and if you flip it over, your needle is going to thread a bit easier. Okay, now this particular color I am also done with, but I'm just gonna put it over here out of the way, and I'll end that off later when this video's over. Okay, so hopefully this is giving you a better idea of how I do this. Now I will also say there are a friend of mine, she stitches on the diagonal, and she stitches the way that Blitz Stitch does, and when instead of doing her rows horizontally, she'll be stitching her rows vertically. And you can do that also. It works, and it works the same way. The other thing she does differently that, well, I tried and it just got me confused. If, say, this color, which is a clover leaf, we'll call it, okay, so I'm gonna stitch it right here, and say it was used again over here in this empty space. It's not on this particular one, but this particular row, but if it was, she would just park on this same row where it was used next, stitch the stitches, go the colors in between, and park them on that same row as often as they were needed until that row was done and she had to move down. So when she got to that thread again, that color was there, she would stitch it. And I can't remember, I think she completes each X as she goes. Some people would just do the half the X, and then on their way back, they would complete the other half. And there are videos out there showing that when it comes to parking. I've personally tried that, and personally, it just messed me up. I just would lose track of what color I'm using or what symbol I'm doing, and I just couldn't do it that way. And again, everybody's different. Everybody thinks differently. Everybody has their own little quirks when it comes to stitching, and the end result is the same. They just get there a little bit differently, and all of that is quite okay. You find the way that works for you. You find the way that you're comfortable with, and you take it from there. Like I said before, there are no cross-stitch police. You do what works for you. This is a hobby. It's supposed to be relaxing. It is not supposed to be something that you stress over, because God only knows these days there's enough stress in our lives. We do not need to be sitting to relax and enjoy something and have it be stressful. That's just not what life's about. Life is just plain too short. So find what works for you as a person, and what this is working for me. Is it going to work for you? Well, I certainly hope so, and I certainly hope that you find your way. But if it doesn't, you know what? It's no big deal. Maybe take some things that I do and some things that somebody else does and come up with a way that works for you. Because it's about finding your joy. It's not about being stressed over it. It's not about being uncomfortable with it. It's all about finding your joy in the piece that you're working on. And if you've done that, then my feeling is you had a good day. Now, do I stitch every day? Absolutely. I stitch as much as I can. I'm retired. I worked 45 years as a nurse. I paid my dues. That's how I think about it. And now I do that which I enjoy, which is my stitching. And have fun doing it. So I think we're looking at about a half an hour here. So I'm going to finish these couple stitches, and hopefully this gives you all a better idea of what I do and how I do it. And my plan at this point is to continue doing Stitch With Me videos. And I'll continue to stitch on the diagonal because any Heaven and Earth design will definitely be stitched this way. Don't know that I can cope with doing them any other way. So they'll all definitely be stitched on a diagonal with this technique, because that is what works best for me. But I do plan on doing some more Stitch With videos. So please, if you have questions or things you want to know or topics you want to talk about, leave it in the comments below, and we'll certainly try to cover those things for you. Because, like I said in my first video, stitching is my passion. It really is what I do to fill my time. Since I retired, I love it. I love seeing the progress. I love seeing pictures come to life. And seriously, from the picture of the chart, these colors are so much more intense than it shows. And I just love watching it all come together and look as amazing as it does. I just enjoy it thoroughly. So with that, I'm going to bid you all farewell for today. I'm going to thank you very, very much for joining me. I do appreciate each and every one of you. And please leave any comments below. So, as I said, it's a learning process for me. So your comments will help me to do these better, because I really do want it to be an enjoyable time for both of us. And any suggestions for topics, please leave them there also. And once again, thank you all for taking some time out of your day to spend some time stitching with me. And we'll see you next time.